Okay, so this summer, I read this book. Hi YouTube, and it was called "Of Hearts and Minds" by Julian McAllister, and it was an interesting book. I really got into the studies of how male children they don't feel they get as much affection and intimate talk from their parents than females. The idea points towards the emotional and relationship basis for hypermasculine focus on power. Basically, what that means is if you feel sincerely that you are exhibiting things such as alienation, it could just be brought on by shame or doubt. A hypermasculine personality leads to completion rather than connection. Um, Goffman explains masculine men have a character. They don't cry or blubber like a woman or a child might, which is rather fascinating, is what I thought. There's a competition rather than a connection, like I stated earlier, and basically Goffman, she doesn't consider that the link between violence to describe actually her view of masculinity. She thinks that it is a gross error. What she thinks is a man's gunshot equals passively acceptance of a common, like a common human. And then that thus leads to the vision of less courage or the leaders and men and their stupidity. This leads to emotions and self-knowledge. The social emotional approach, rationalism and realists, that could be calculatable as logic. Actually, calculus, more real forms and shapes. It's just a form of mathematics. Self-knowledge is pretty much knowing yourself. It's knowing the people around you. It's a full understanding of the universe and how it functions. It brings in ideals of Pythagoras and many other rationalist thinkers. Self-knowledge may be cognitive matter, but also an emotional one. It's related to the social realm of awareness of emotions. The concerns not only of one's own, but also those of others. So basically, if you can understand yourself, you can understand basically how other people are feeling around you. It's not just a one-sided coin, and it's very interesting because at sometimes in life, it's much easier than just sitting back and saying, hey, no, I don't understand you, or hey, it's pretty cool that you think that way, but I mean, in the scheme of things, if you don't understand another person or yourself even, it could be very difficult to understand the world at whole. So with this way of thinking, it helps you be able to read into other people's minds and contact the actual issue, which is pretty sweet. There is a link between individual and social matters, and to the extent where we are ignorant of our own emotion and to those of others, our life is a long sleep. Meaning that, personally, I went through this, I felt this way, this link of just individual social matters, and for some odd reason, as I'm walking down the street, I'm thinking, man, I'm just butchering this, because at times if I forget, hey, I'm a person too, but I'm more concerned with other people's matters than my own, so I tend to become more ignorant in the fact that I'm being vain. However, I don't mean to be, and if you sense that there's other people in the world, they may actually not be vain. They may actually be people who are trying to succeed in the world and understand you better. Boys are more susceptible than girls to feeling these signs of weakness. They face anger, then they may be seen as strength. Basically, when they're weak, they're more verbal. Their self-protection is weakness, and the vulnerable feelings shape from feelings of love, grief, fear, etc. The vulnerable emotions, again, are bisocial, leading to violence and destruction. It may also occur in men who are more nurturing over like their children, more women-like in behavior. Women could be more easily angered than a male could be. And actually, I find those kinds of emotions kind of cute because, well, yeah. In 1848, Karl Marx, a human species needs connection with other human beings. Going back to that thought of alienation, could also be brought on by greed or power. Impotence could lead to shame or anger. Masculine behaviors could be lust, power, domination, just overwhelmingly mind throbbing to bring on pain into the world without even knowing that they are people who want to take over so much control of the world that they are harming the people in it and themselves. That could go back to poor upbringing, feelings of self-hate, many reasons. I'd look more into it myself. The vulnerability feelings in emotional talk, withdrawal or shame. People such as like Hitler or Stalin, more like political figures that we would notice younger in our younger years in life. There's this thing called emotional silence too. Men being more likely to share their emotions than women. Women will suppress them much longer and then get much more angry later on. However, there are some men who exhibit these feelings too. It doesn't make them technically bisexual, but it does give them a bisexual background in life. There is this thing called alexithymia, and mostly men get this. However, there is a difference between males and females. Fear is a warning toward danger. The repressing of dangers to self and others. The avoidance leads to avoidance in a self-perpetuating loop. They will constantly see like different like trends of emotion going in a literal circle. So you could tell that the person is exhibiting some sort of confusion. And a social emotional feedback loop. Shame would be the master emotion in this case. There's a book called Soul Babies. I don't know if any of you have ever read it, but it is popular. It is very interesting, and I would recommend that you read it. And then there's also this other book by Trey Ellis, The Platitude and Senat Diaz, A Brief, Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde. And I would totally read that one. I was actually looking into that one, the second one that I mentioned, because I read the first one. However, the second one that I mentioned sounds a lot very interesting, so I think I'm going to go pick that one up soon. But the psychoneuroendocrinology of this basis is just mind-boggling, and it gets in depth with shame and the individual feelings of pride states and shame states and how they both occur outside the awareness, which are usually unacceptable. And it results in insecurity or feelings of separateness and powerlessness. As Lewis, in the year 1971, was trying to get at in his psychotherapy sessions, that shame builds a wall between both opposing stances, the opposing stances being disgust and ignored. And then right down the center will be isolation. And there will either be a side of disgust as too close or ignored as too far. And shame being recursive and grief and fear being on opposite poles as well. There is this thing called the I-we relationship, and as Lewis was stating, it was to show us a way of interdependence. there was actually, it was very interesting, going back to the male-female. If you check your finger length, that will show low levels of fetal and androgen levels. It will basically tell you, like through the ratio of 40-20, the ring finger being 40, the second digit being shorter digit, and women's high prenatal testosterone levels and prenatal androgen would be moral reasoning, the criminality of homosexuality, ADHD, and autism spectrum disorder, and the exogenous testosterone, utilitarian over deontological judgments. Australian and Swedish activists show relatively masculine digit ratios compared to average for women. And after speaking all of this, I would just like to say a few more names of people that kind of interest me, that may link into this scientific journal, Lab Animals, going back to Of Hearts and Minds, that I found inside the book, actually. There was Thomas Sheff, Ronald Reagan, Jimmy Carter, Leon Wurmser, Reagan and Thatcher, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Robert Bly, Mary Field Belenky, Sherry Kleinman, Rachel Rosenthal, Henry Weiss, Susan Spearling, Descartes, Keith Thomas, Henry Moore, Andrea Casapino, John Ray, Carlos Linnaeus, John Locke, Gottfried Leibniz, Charles Darwin, Cesare Lombroso, Mein Kampf, and then there's a few books such as Mein Kampf, The War in Bosnia, Equals Before God by sociologist Cheryl Kleinman, Woman's Way of Knowing by Maryfield Belenky, The Economist, and article Animal Rights. Research supporters represent an extreme case, but they tell us something about ourselves. The Introduction of the Animal Rights Movement in America by Lawrence and Susan Finzer, and also the book Animals and People Sharing the World by James Serpell. But those are just some books and names of people that I found interesting and that I'm studying currently. And I hope to hear from somebody. Just leave a message or anything. Okay, bye.